Hey guys, it is Rachel Feldman. I am so excited to have Katie, this amazing woman who talks about really everything that we desire as coaches to get unstuck, that we desire as people in this world to really dive into the inner parts of us, our soul, our being, and so that we can truly create not only the life we want, but the business. And Katie specifically works with women. So I had such an amazing conversation with her, even before this podcast, about owning your power, finding your truth, not feeling stuck, going into those deep parts. She calls it deep digging, those parts of us that we maybe feel shameful, guilty, those feelings that we push down so deep into what Katie refers as the cave, and how to really get out of it, and that it doesn't really serve us on any level to hold that stuff in. So Katie, before we dive into this session, this time, this amazing podcast, can you tell everyone where to find you and just recap a little of what I shared about you?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So you can find me at katiekozlowski.com. You can find me on my website. I always spell it because it's sort of like a crazy Polish name. So obviously Katie, most people can spell www.katiekozlowski.com. And then also Instagram is my jam right now, and my name there is at I am Katie Kozlowski. So those are the two best places to find me. And you summed me up. Actually, I should hire you to be my copywriter, because everything you're saying, I'm like, well, that sounds really fun. I am 150% about the deep digging into the subconscious, going almost backwards, doing things in reverse, looking at things upside down. And the most important thing that I teach is that you want to know who you are. And in order to know who you are, you have to do the deep digging, because you're a gold mine. It's like, I see it as like a sacred journey.
What I love was our original conversation, and even just where we are right now, because I think when we hear this word deep digging, and you and I were even talking about all these words that we hear: shadow work, rebirthing, shaman circles, all these words. But what I feel you're talking about, and from even doing a lot of those different techniques, strategies, is what you're saying. It's all of it. We don't even have to put a word on it. And I want you to really explain to people that these words that we hear, shadow work or rebirthing or finding ourselves, because we do live in a world of many different people who teach this, who doesn't teach exactly your strategy, but we often hear this and we think, oh, but I did Gabby Bernstein's masterclass. I did this person, this person's 3-day. Can you really help the audience to understand, and especially those who are feelers, empaths, or just sensitive to the world, help them to understand what your work is like and why you've built a business completely around this work?
Yeah. It's interesting, because you're right. It's very complicated. And it can be super duper confusing because of the fact, and I think that honestly, at the end of the day, if there's one thing I stand for, it's making it simple. It's making it easy, and making it something that you can do for yourself over and over and over again. That's why I started doing this in the first place, because when I did my personal journey, my spiritual journey, I had a guru and I went to his workshops, and it was like riddles and, like, go on this quest and do this and then meditate on this. And, I just felt like I was like, what the F? Can anybody just tell me the answer? Like, why does it have to be so hard? Stop telling me I got to do this ayahuasca ceremony, and then I got to take this thing, and then I got to do that. Why can't anybody just show me how to do it? And so that's what my work is based around, showing you how to unpack yourself and your subconscious and understand why you are who you are, so that you can accept who you are. Because until you know and understand who you are, you're very confused. And if you're confused, you will constantly be seeking out guidance and answers. You'll never feel complete. You'll never feel
I
whole.
feel stuck. I
You
mean, I
feel
think
stuck.
that's exactly, you said it so beautifully. And for your copy, just re-listen. Re-listen to what you said, because I do see a lot of coaches who work in what I would say this area. And not a but, and at the same time, I think the biggest struggle in our business is to help somebody to understand this process that is different from the masterclass, the 3-day, or anyone else, because you wanted to simplify it. You also wanted, and I feel like I am your ideal client, because the things that you said, you were like, can somebody just tell me? I'm like, that's how I always feel, man.
Right.
I'm like, can somebody just bring all the fabulosity, all the pain, all the triumph, all the wonderful, and help to guide me? Because
Right.
it's not just this one thing. It's not
Right.
just the shadow work, the rebirthing, this, or you even talked about plant medicine. It isn't just
Right.
one stop in this human experience. And I think you just really said it beautifully.
Oh, good. 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 No, yeah. And you're right, because that's the biggest thing. And that's usually, because I've been doing this for quite some time and I've had a lot of conversations over the years. Who's your ideal client? Who are you looking for? Who do you help? And I've had these fancy statements, right? Oh, I help women process deep suffering to get to the root cause of the problem so that they can find freedom and liberate themselves into joy. And you're like, what does that mean?
Right. We do this. I love that you just said that, because in my membership the other day, I was like, guys, stop using this like really, it's like all the digital marketing stuff that we're taught. Find the perfect pitch. It's like, but your person is straight up just looking for somebody
Right.
to just say it straight from the heart. And
Yeah, somebody tell me. And that's when I realized, because I did some research recently, and I'll tell you, if you really want to understand who you're helping, that's a great, I had conversations. And my question, where I got sort of where I opened up the conversation, I said, do you feel like a wounded goddess? Just because seemed like, I don't know, it just was the question that came to mind. And I don't necessarily use goddess language, but I just wanted to know, is there anybody out there who resonates with this concept? And I got all kinds of women coming back and saying, oh, I do, I do, I do. And what was interesting was I kept having the same conversation over and over again, which is, I just want somebody to tell me why I'm still in pain, or why I can't get it right, or why I'm stuck. Will anybody just tell me like it is? Why is it so complicated? And I said, oh, well, that would be me. I can help you.
and I love that you said that, because you know what, truth is, in every person that I've hired since I was 20 to help me in my path always said, look, I've done so many different teachings, and I'm gonna pull out from the freaking woodwork, Rach, to help you. And also would share their own personal life, their own personal experience.
Right.
And I would always stay with that woman, that person, until she would even say, I feel like our journey together, maybe it should go to this next person. Or I just felt intuitively like we had journeyed together,
Mm-hmm.
and eyes wide open to look for the next person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the beauty of it. And it is, I'm very big on looking at the mythology and looking at the stories and the archetypes and things like that, just because it's information. And what I see is that, and before I even started doing the studying, I used to call my work, because again, I had all these fancy names. Like I had to come up with, like Willy Wonka, I had to call it it couldn't just be
The
this is
Dick
candy bar.
method. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the candy bar, you know. It was like, this is a Wonka choo choo choo, but with dip, you know, had this big fancy names. But like, okay, but what does it do? But I would call a soul odyssey session, because I had this sense of the journey, and the journey is kind of like, it is the soul's evolution. It's who you are. And I think of it nine times out of 10, what I'm doing is it's a reclamation. It's a retracing of your steps. And it's a journey, because you have to go back and figure out where you got off track so that you can get back on track. So even if I'm working with, say, right, like a CEO, like a high powered, highly successful, driven woman with a PhD that makes 7 figures, somehow she ends up with me saying, but why do I still think I'm a piece of shit?
Or why do I feel, and I love that you brought this up, because in answering that and giving that example, it is shocking how many of us who are successful, who maybe we're driven, of course, in different ways, because each one of us are so different. But just in that example, we either are holding shame, guilt that's our own, guilt that's somebody else's. And so, what do you think, even for that woman, or any woman who is like, okay, I'm not a PhD, I'm not making 7 figures, but I'm the CEO of my freaking home, and half the day I hate myself. I think I'm a
Right,
bad mom. I'm not, and just shame, shame, shame,
right,
shame.
right, right.
So tell us, even for this woman who's a 7 figure, this woman who's the mom, why do we think it's so difficult, and how do you help to, why do we think it's so difficult, and why did you develop your business
Right.
around making it super duper simple to see that growth can be painful?
Yeah. Well, because I went through it, right? Personally, you know, I have a whole backstory of, I got hit by a taxi. I was like, you know, in abusive relationships. I lived that really painful existence. And I did the whole spiritual journey with the guru myself, right? I did the whole thing. I got to the tippy top of the mountain. I mean, I was there. I was at the precipice of enlightenment. I mean, I was like, holy crap, I made it. I made it. Like, I lived through everything, and I'm here and I'm there and like whatever. And then it was like I literally got to the top of the mountain, and it was almost like he just like went, like it was like he just like pushed me off the edge, and I went crashing down into the bottom, into the depths of the depths of the depths of the depths. And I fell into like the greatest depression ever, as a result of everything that I'd experienced. And it was really shocking and heartbreaking, because I, for the first time, had to open my eyes and see that I was in the pits of despair personally, and this was how it felt. And not only that, but I had this guru, and it happened to be a man, and I had invested everything in him, and he was supposed to save me. And I had this meditation, and I talk about this sometimes, where I felt like I was drowning, and I mean, in my vision, in my experience, I was drowning. And he was standing there with his arms folded, watching me drown. And I was like, what are you doing? You're supposed to save me. I'm drowning. I'm drowning. And everybody thinks that the end of the story is, he said, but I taught you how to swim. This like beautiful thing, right? He goes, then go ahead and drown. You know, and I'm like, okay. So in my vision, I drowned, and I literally went down to the bottom of the ocean, and I hit the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. Like, we're not talking rock bottom. We're talking the bottom of rock bottom of rock bottom. Like, when you hit the bottom, there's mud and you kind of sink. And then I had this extraordinary realization where, once I let go and I surrendered, I literally shot up to the top, and there I was at the top. I finally made it. But I didn't do it clawing my way. I surrendered and I let go, and it was the realization. So that's when I realized, oh wow, somebody has to teach people that it's okay to dig for who you are, dig for your truth, go through the dark. I don't call it a dark night of the soul, because it's not it's not a bad thing. It's not, we talk about this like, oh, shame, like, oh, poor you, you have shame in your body and shame. You know, well, I'll tell you something. If you look at the map of consciousness, at the base of the map of consciousness is shame. It sits at the root. It sits in the root of who you are. It's built into the foundation. It's the foundational flaw. We all have it. It's built into our being. And the only way to get it out is to rip up the foundation. So I see it like a backhoe. I have to teach women to go in reverse, because everyone's taught reach for the stars,
Do you think,
ascend.
do you think that's because it was interesting, even as I was listening to you, I thought, how many male teachers have I had? And did I feel the same connection that I did to a woman, or did I have an easier time with a male teacher? Because I've had both. And I would say that I'm sure there's going to be people who are listening and they've really connected and learned and excelled with a man teacher or a coach or a guru. I know for me to find my peace as the person, as a woman, I needed to fully trust a woman and have her take me through that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I just want everyone listening, because sometimes we can get reactive and say, but I'm a great male teacher, and we're all great teachers. It's to come back to the womb that I was very shameful of for all different stuff, felt guilty, worked with many energy workers where I had a lot of physical issues in those areas. And she would always say, this is your shame, this is your guilt. I just want to kind of reiterate that so nobody takes it personally, but just say, I really do agree with you, because that trust of woman, which has always been really extremely tough for me for a myriad of different old stories and reasons and trauma and all that different stuff that I have personally. I just want to reiterate that clearly, because what I'm hearing from you is, for a lot of us, not a blanket statement, but for a lot of women, myself included, what you're saying is really essential. I know that was a huge part for me. And I just want to reiterate that, because sometimes in interviews and stuff like this, we think, well, she's saying that men aren't great teachers.
Oh
No,
no. And
no, right.
in all honesty, my relationship with my male teacher, I adore him as a teacher. And even though he hurt me, it hurt in the moment. I actually love him very much. And it's very much like what you're saying, is that I had something to learn from him. It's like what you said, when you work with someone and when you come to the completion, you come to the completion, right? I had a lot to learn by being with my male teacher. And then when I sort of fell apart, it was a woman teacher that I found, that I went to, who basically said, because I went to her and said, I don't understand. I did everything right, and I was devoted to my teacher, and I did all the teachings, and I was the best student I could be, and blah blah blah. And what did I do wrong? And she said, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. And let me show you how right you are. And she was the one that explained it simply. So I learned the simplicity from her, but I got so much out of what he taught me as well. So you see, it's definitely, it depends on what you need, when you need it. And what I learned was that what I basically got, because I had a male teacher and then I went to this female teacher, is that the masculine, I mean, if you look at Hinduism, if you look at anything, right, like the Shiva is very aggressive in nature and very kind of destructive and violent sometimes, and can hurt you. Now, Shakti, on the other hand, is more creative and loving and nurturing and compassionate. So it just depends on what you need when you need it, right? And at one point I needed that more. I needed Shiva. and then I needed Shakti, and I'm a Shakti lady. So I kind of loved both sides of it. And I think that that's kind of the beauty of how we all do what we do, and everyone needs different medicine for different times. And the
Is that
beauty,
why you bring the different archetypes into your teaching?
it is. And also because the what I'm looking to help people do is actually become a fully balanced, fully embodied human, which means you need Shiva and Shakti, masculine and feminine. So if you look at it from that standpoint, it's really quite brilliant to have a male teacher and a female teacher. And it is a piece of it, because what I love to help people understand is that once you get the healing, once you get the pieces that hurt kind of out of the way, then you can really start to almost, I call it like renovating, because when we're working, we're constantly identifying, okay, this needs to go, we're putting this in place, this needs to go, we're putting this in place. So we're not just removing things and leaving you empty. I'm actually teaching you how to update your system repeatedly so that you become like an optimal human, which is essentially a fully embodied, fully present, fully awake person.
Well, and I think the beauty of what you even just shared and is that I've had many people in my life that I think of my acupuncturist. I was with her for 9 years,
Mm-hmm.
2 hours a week, every week.
Wow. Yep.
And she was a woman who taught me the beauty of both the feminine and the masculine. Because I would say for me as a woman, it was more difficult for me to own my feminine nature. I felt I've got to be this way, I've got to be
Right.
tough. And what I love about your business is you're teaching the woman who is searching. This is a process, because what you were saying in sharing about how different your coaching is, your business, is to bring that woman back to her intuition, for her to say, this is the beautiful flow. And there are times when there may be on the scale, one's a little higher, or to get even to the part where there is no separation, because
Mm-hmm.
we're just being, because
Right.
it's what you said, we've just let go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's the kind of, it's like you said when we were talking before about being home. You want to come home to yourself from the standpoint of just like, it really is as simple as love and acceptance. And I was thinking about it this morning, because I woke up this morning and I was even thinking about why I started this in the first place. And when I started, I forget sometimes how hurt I was. I forget. And when I walked into the workshop where I saw my teacher teaching, and I got to experience it and witness it, I fell in love with the work. Like, I fell in love with him. And I was always kind of confused, like, what did I fall in love with, and why did I want it? Why do I do this? Because it's not always easy. And I had this sort of epiphany this morning where I said, wow, when I saw him doing what he did, and I fell in love with it. I said, I want to do that. I want to do that. He was a wizard of pulling things out of thin air and consciousness. And, I wanted to do that stuff too. I thought that was so cool. And I did learn how to do that. But more importantly, what I realized this morning is that what I fell in love with was the fact that he could stand there and be with somebody. At the time, the girl was a girl, and she had been assaulted by her father, who was the chief of the where she lived. Like, he was the chief of the tribe, and it was this horrific experience. But the fact that he could hold the love for her because she was in so much pain, I realized this morning, oh, that's actually what I fell in love with. Not all the cool tricks, but the fact that he literally
Health space.
then that he was able to do that for her. That's what I fell in love with, because that was what I needed. And that is actually, I think that one of the things that I do beautifully, and what my system does beautifully, is that I learned by virtue of being in that environment, because I didn't grow up like that. I grew up with angry people and alcoholics and suicides, and I watched all this stuff as a kid. But by being in that environment, I learned the kind of this beautiful way of just allowing to open up to the depths. And it's like it's permission to be who you are. And by giving someone permission to be who they are, no matter where they are or how they feel or what happened, there's something that happens in the energy field that opens and expands the subconscious, and all of that stuff that sits down in the bottom of your being, like the shame and the anger, the kind of stuff that you don't know why is there.
That makes us literally feel like we're going to never be happy.
Right.
I think that's the part that I keep going back on, why I think what you're saying is really special. And I know that a lot of coaches who want to, excuse me, do this kind of work can get really stuck in not explaining it as clearly in this all-encompassing process, because we think, oh, but I read this book, I went to this workshop, I attended this masterclass. But to have somebody hold space to say, you know what, I wish I could tell you that it was this one tool and trick, and that it was, a red band, all the things, and that it was doing the tapping and the EFT and this and that. It's all of it. It doesn't mean that every different person has to go through the same, but whatever it takes, some of us with a little fuller trash can of stuff.
Right.
That's what I said. Well, I think you just talked about a lot of stuff that I've gone through in family, in origin family. And I know for me as a woman, that shame, that guilt, or thinking I was broken, I was not enough. I think the walk of the woman. I always think of one of my favorite songs, This Woman's Work, that Maxwell is saying. Mm-hmm. And also, of course, the original writer, is that this woman's journey is different for each of us, where we live, our strengths, our weaknesses, our ability to let go. I'm a stubborn ass kind of girl, but it's still this amazing journey. And I know that digging deep, going into these really dark, shameful places requires trusting somebody.
Right.
And I would say that the last 9 years, and I remember doing EST when I was 17 and reading Scott Peck when I was 18 and saying, oh, the road less traveled, I'm going to update my map. I really thought I was golden. And even all the work that I've done with everyone in between, it still wasn't the same work as when I fully opened up my heart, my soul, myself, and bared the things that I never thought I would tell somebody.
Right.
Or that I've told somebody, but they didn't hold space. Meaning, it would be things like, "Aw,
right,
all right, okay, let's save that for next time," instead of saying, "No, girl.
Right.
You can trust me. Trust that I'm not going to take this on. I'm not going to let you sit in your stuff. I'm going to help you rip apart this stuff to get to the next place." That place that you said when you went really far down and came up still doesn't mean there's work. But I love what you explained in this podcast, because it's really hard to understand what that work looks like unless we show our ideal client or our friends, our sisters, and that we inspire and say, no, it's not just the snap of the finger. I wish it was like that.
Right.
And that's why I wanted you to be on this podcast, because I know I am so inspired by your Instagram. I'm so inspired because you do speak my love language, and I would be your ideal client. And I just think a lot of humans in the
Right.
world, we do think there is a magical cure and there is a quick fix, because we live in a world of, I always say, bullshit and band-aids. And that's different for each person in each
Right.
part of the world, our different viewpoints, our different trauma, our stuff.
Right.
And I think that you are, not think, I know that you are somebody that I will always follow, always suggest for people to come and work with the person that says, listen, lady, this is going to be hard, but damn, this is going to be a journey to an
Right.
amazing life. Even if you feel like shit and you're successful, or you don't have anything, because this journey in the human world is pretty darn hard.
Right. No, I love that. Well, number one, thank you. And then number two, um, yes, because it's the, it's the antithesis of bypassing. It's like, it couldn't be. And I often say everyone teaches you, you go one way, I go the other way. People are looking at art this way, I say I turn it on its head, and I go, oh, look at that. And one thing that I discovered a long time ago is that the way certain things are built, like the map of consciousness, encourages you to go one direction. um, Abraham, who I love, but I also sometimes scratch my head and say, I don't know why you're taking advice from a talking star who's not a human, because he's never been a human.
Because he talks about law of attraction.
Right. But
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, here's a question for you, like collection of stars. What do you do when you're a human and it's really hard and you have emotions? Like, can you talk to that? And that's when it's like, just someone say it like it is. I learned the value of being a human, which is actually the secret. Sort of the hit again, it's like, why won't anybody just say what is this really about? Even the gurus, they say it in these like poetic languages, travel with me from the unreal to the real, and the blah blah, and I love these gurus, and they're like, these are
And
my
it works
friends.
for them. I mean, that's the cool thing that I love about talking with coaches. It takes courage to build a business. It takes conviction to show up and say what you really feel, even if it goes against some of the teachings of amazing gurus that have helped people. And that's the part that I love so much is, yes, some people love Abraham Hicks, and then some people really identify with a completely different person. And then there's everyone in the middle
Right.
saying, oh my God, okay, my kids are screaming, or work, I can't even get up to pee. We're talking like real life reality.
Right. Right.
And somebody like us, or even in our conscious, says, can somebody just make it a little easier? Because
Right.
I'm really struggling to just get out of my life and see like even a time in my day that I can even breathe.
Right.
Sometimes we can't even get to that. And it does take a little more of this, what I call structure and roadmap, even though
Right.
we are being in the frickin' flow, man. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
No, yeah, because, well, and that's the other thing is that I'll always tell people when they come to me, I say, I'm not going to tell you you'll never be sad again, you'll never be stressed again. I said, I would much rather train you and teach you how to get back to center no matter what happens. So spend some time with me. Let me help you figure out why you're feeling what you're feeling, and let's address that. And let's give you a healthier vibe, right?
That's
Let's update
power.
your nervous system. Let's
That's power.
oh,
That
it's amazing. And yeah,
power.
it's incredible. But then let's also create a structure for you so that you don't have to move through life um like protective. And that's the thing that I notice the most, is that if you've been hurt, if you've been through trauma, which is like everybody, essentially what we like to do is we like to try and control our environment so that we're sure that nothing ever hurts us. Yeah,
That
right.
happened for me. Hello.
Yeah, you want to like make a cocoon, and
Or
people work
control
really
these
hard.
other areas. I think that's the part when I think about the 7-figure CEO or the mom, or even in this conversation. I mean, every one of us has our ways of managing That's the key word, managing our stress, our trauma, our old
Right.
stories, or whatever, even just our life. And why manage? Because there will come a day where it breaks and
Right.
then we feel like crap.
Right.
And then it can go really deep, really dark. And instead of getting to that place,
Right. Exactly, exactly. And that's usually, because I have been doing this long enough now to look at the sort of overarching story and say, now, what is the, because people will say, so like, what is your ideal client? What are they usually going through? I'm like, well, by the time they get to me, like their house is burned down, or like, there's something that, and I call it the money note. Like I have all these funny terms for things. And it's kind of like when you bang your elbow, the pain vibrates at such a big level that you can't stand it anymore. That's usually the point that people come to me, because, and I got hit by a taxi, right? And I was like, whoa, like that's bad. I got to get some help here. But it had been going on for 10 years and longer than that. So that is exactly it. It's like, why do we have to wait until it gets so bad? And then what usually tends to happen is something sets it off. And then it gets really to the point where it's
really
debilitating.
awful. It's
And then
debilitating. And
when they're in that space, then they're willing to go, okay, now I'm really in trouble. Can you help me? And I
I
go, well,
think,
yeah, but
unfortunately, that is human nature. And I know, in us even wrapping this up for coaches, is that before we started recording, we even talked about how most of the world, I mean, I know for myself, I am stubborn. Even though I'll be in pain, I'm conscious of that pain. I've read, I follow people, but there has to be this point that I'm so sick and tired of really being sick and tired, because it's bleeding into every area of my life. Not one compartment, not my relationships or my nutrition or my exercise or my family. It's now bled, and that's debilitating. And
right,
yeah, I wish that it wasn't scary to feel the pain.
right,
And I also know that's why there are people like you. And also for coaches, we have to realize we have to really explain this to our ideal client
right.
in trainings, in blogs, in audios and videos, as we were talking about, because our job is to demystify how difficult it is to dive deep into the cave.
Mm-hmm. And the beauty of what you find in there. And I think that if there's anything that I love, that's one of my favorite things. And it's, and I've often gone, well, this is so weird. This is so weird about me. But again, if you look at the archetypes and you look at the stories and you look at the feminine in general, most feminine archetypes, most goddesses, most deities, I don't care whether it's you're looking at a Dakini in the Tibetan lineage, or you're looking at the goddesses in the Greeks, wherever you look, we have the same archetypes, and the feminine thrives. This is the whole thing. It thrives in the dark. That's the whole beauty why Persephone goes in the underworld. She didn't perish and die and suffer. She became the queen. So
Mm.
that's the whole thing, is that if I can guide you and lead you to your cave, what do you think you mean? Campbell, who said that? Campbell? Who said the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek?
I know Rumi quotes because I post
I
them,
think
but
it's Joseph Campbell, but I forget. I might be wrong, but
but
they
we'll
say that
confirm in
phrase.
the show notes.
Yeah, I think so, but I've got lots of people in my head right now. But the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. They've been saying that forever. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's your darkness, man. That's your depths. Not to mention the fact that it's super duper dark inside your body, and it's super duper dark in the womb when you're a baby. You can't see in there. You're like, you're just in there. It's black, it's dark. And I know that that's where we don't come from light. We actually come from darkness. And that's the whole thing. It's a trick that we've been told. And the more I can encourage and help people, and I think probably the more I teach this, like that's probably going to be what I teach the most, is how can I help more people get into their caves? Let me show you, let me guide you, let me take you there, because I've done it to hell and back again. I mean, it's every story ever written. It's the Wizard of Oz, it's Alice in Wonderland, it's the Hobbit, it's the Odyssey. We talk about it. It's Jesus, right? I'm hanging on a cross. Like it's all those stories. And, and that's not even in a religious sense, just from the standpoint, it's an archetype, you know what I mean? So we have these stories. Every culture has a story about someone sort of suffering, going into a cave, and then finding their light. And it's like, that's how you do it. It doesn't matter what religion or what belief system, it's a universal concept. And that's my, like, that's like my offering to this world. I think, like, when I leave, they'll say, like, on my tombstone, it will say, she's gone back into the dark. Not into the light, into the dark. She's gone back into the dark.
But I think what's so beautiful about this is each one of us have different amounts of stuff. Each one of us have our own pain. And I know that growth happens either in community or when we are working with somebody. There's only so much internal that we can do by ourselves. And a lot of us do it. But I would say most of us, which is why we need a coach or we need a mentor in all different areas. That's why, because it can get scary and it's much easier to not walk alone.
Right. No, it's true. It's true. And even in the stories, I was just reading last night. I was reading about the Odyssey and everything, and Odysseus called on, I think it was Athena. You have a lot of Athena energy. You know that, right? You get a lot of Athena in you, which is great. Athena's awesome. But he called on her and she helped guide him home. It's like, we all want that. And I just have to say that it's like, because I used to always want to do it by myself. And I had a real mental struggle around, like,
depending.
Okay, so I had this teacher, like, am I ashamed because I needed a teacher? Like, wouldn't it? And he used to say, you have no idea how privileged and blessed you are to have someone in human form who is willing to help you now. You have earned this. You are very, very blessed. And this is something you should be proud of, not ashamed of. And so I think that it's like, sometimes we get stuck in that, like, I'll figure it out. I can figure it out. And it's like, well, when I think about my journey, I did a lot on my own, but to have not one, but three amazing.
That we don't have to martyr. And I would say there are so many areas that we touched on. I want to just like reaffirm as we close this out that everyone sees their life in a different way. I know for me, as being with all my stuff, I developed these stories around thinking that I had to do it all myself, thinking that I was weak if I depended on somebody, witnessing many different women in my life just push through on relationships, just, man, push through. And I grew up wondering, where were boundaries? What did it look like to embrace and really say, but I don't want to just push through? And I know that we talked about a lot of sensitive topics, a lot of topics that can sometimes even evoke feelings, brings up our stuff. And I just want to remind, as we're closing this, that this is, your journey to get to where you are, and that your ideal client's going to really identify. And as even we as women listen to this, to really sit back and say, what are my core beliefs about self and identity? What are my beliefs about not depending on people, or needing all these things that are in our conscious, the things that have been fed to us, the things that we've inherited, the stories that we've created. So thank you so much.
You.
And guys, remember, her Katie's website and her Instagram. And these are places that if Katie is your woman and this person that you say, I took a breath of fresh air, I'm not alone. That has always been my big mission when I came on to the digital market and started building Rachel's Wellness was I had one mission, and that was that there wasn't going to be a mom or a woman or even a kid like myself growing up with all these autoimmune and diagnosis, that there would be education and information. And that is power. So just remember, as you listen to this and you're navigating through your own life, always be conscious, as we all want to be, and find your divine path. Katie, do you want to leave anybody with any
Last words?
last words?
Final words. My last words. Whoo, last words. No, just thank you so much for, having this in-depth conversation. And it really is. It's like if there's anything that I think sets us free, it is those when the things I call it like the tectonic plates shift in your being. When you feel movement, that's a good thing. When you feel emotion, that's a good thing. And so just
own it, man.
Move you. Yeah. Be moved by life. It's fabulous.
Own it, own it, own it. Take the baby steps. I keep saying to my kids, feel the feels, man, because I was so uncomfortable with feeling the feels.
Right.
And man, what a blessing. So, all right, guys, follow this chick, subscribe to her. She has some daily tips on her website, and you will see all the information below. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Make sure you follow Katie and hit subscribe so you always get notified of the next podcast. Bye, guys.